I caught my wife in bed with the air conditioner repairman, and that alone was enough to leave me stunned. But the nightmare didn't end there. A few days later, I discovered she was also involved with the elderly neighbor next door. And the final, gut-wrenching blow came when I realized the last person in this chain of betrayal was none other than my own father. My name is Ryan Matthews, 32 years old, living in the suburbs of Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm an electrical engineer for a major construction company, working 6 days a week, never late on a paycheck, never raising my voice to my wife. I'm the kind of guy who believes in peace. No chaos. No drama. And she, Melissa, 30 years old, was everything I thought I wanted. Cheerful, friendly, intelligent, and always able to make things feel lighter after a long day. We got married 5 years ago. No kids yet. No rush. We both wanted financial stability first. Melissa worked as a nurse in a private clinic, with erratic shifts, late nights, early mornings. I never suspected anything. We trusted each other. At least, I trusted her. Until that fateful day when I installed a new home security camera system. Not because I suspected anyone. There had been a few petty thefts in our neighborhood, and I just wanted to make sure we had evidence if anything happened. I set up a small camera in the living room, one at the front door, and one in the kitchen. All discreet, barely noticeable unless you were looking for them. The footage streamed directly to my phone. 3 days later, I was at a job site in Greenville, running late. When I opened my phone to check the cameras, just to see if the cats were making a mess, my heart stopped. Melissa was in the living room, completely naked, and she wasn't alone. The air conditioner repairman we'd hired the day before, the guy I'd offered water to, laughed with, and shaken hands with, was on top of her, making himself at home in my house. I didn't scream. I didn't smash my phone. I just watched. Every minute, every movement, every moan, every whispered word, words sweeter than anything she'd ever said to me in our 5 years of marriage. I don't know how long I sat there. When the screen went dark from inactivity, I was still frozen, clutching my phone like a lifeless shell. That night, I didn't go home. I drove around the city until past 2 a.m., parked at a rundown gas station, and slept in my car. I didn't cry. I wasn't angry. Just empty. The next morning, I went home as if nothing had happened. Melissa was making breakfast, wearing a thin nightgown, smiling as always. I looked at her, remembering the way she'd gazed at that repairman, a look she'd never given me in 5 years as her husband. She kissed my cheek and asked, "Sleep well, honey?" I smiled and said, "Yeah, slept great." From that moment, I knew I couldn't be the fool anymore. I didn't want to make a scene. I didn't want to beg or cry. I wanted to bury her betrayal with undeniable proof. I would watch silently. I would collect evidence. I would uncover every detail of the truth. I'd piece together the filthy picture she was hiding behind her morning smiles. I didn't know what was waiting for me, but I knew one thing. If she betrayed me once, it wouldn't stop there. And I was right. It was worse than I could have ever imagined. After discovering my wife's affair with the repairman, I wasn't the same person anymore. But not in the way people might expect. I didn't crumble or drown my sorrows in alcohol. Instead, I became sharper, more alert. I started seeing everything through the eyes of a predator, calm, patient, and always watching. Melissa, meanwhile, played her role perfectly. Morning kisses, caring questions when I got home, even offering to cook my favorite meals on weekends. If I hadn't seen her betrayal with my own eyes, I'd still believe I was the luckiest man alive. But now, I noticed things I'd overlooked before. Texts she quickly deleted, shopping trips with no bags to show for it, and times she left the house dressed far too nicely for a quick errand. One Saturday afternoon, pretending to nap after a night shift, I overheard Melissa call out, "Honey, I'm heading to John's to check on a leaky pipe he mentioned." John, our neighbor for over a decade, was in his 60s, a widower. I'd always seen him as a kind uncle figure, someone who'd help out when I was away. But something felt off. I waited 10 minutes, then quietly got out of bed. I opened the camera app. I'd secretly placed a tiny camera in Melissa's purse the day before, just to test where she went. Now, it paid off. The footage streaming to my phone stopped me cold. She was in John's house, and there was no leaky pipe. Melissa stood in his kitchen, wearing a short dress I'd never seen her wear at home. John, the old man I'd respected, stood behind her, hands on her waist, whispering something that made her giggle. I gripped my phone, nausea rising in my throat. Then, right before my eyes, they started kissing. Not a mistake, not a fleeting moment. This was rehearsed, familiar. Melissa slid onto the kitchen counter like she'd done it 100 times. I turned off the screen, leaning against the wall outside our house, trying to stay calm. I wanted to storm over, kick down his door, and scream. But that would be too easy for her. No, I needed more. I needed proof, and I needed the whole truth. When Melissa returned after nearly an hour, she carried a bag of cookies. "John gave these to you, homemade," she said, smiling brightly. I looked at her, then at the cookies. Betrayal had never smelled so sweet. I thanked her, kissed her forehead, playing the clueless husband. But in my mind, one thought burned: she's used to this. And there's no way it's just these two. I started reviewing all the camera footage, tracking Melissa's movements, cross-referencing her absences with the men in our lives. And then, I stumbled on something far worse than I'd ever imagined. One person kept appearing in Melissa's conversations, someone I'd never thought to suspect: my father. I remembered how she'd bring food to his house when he was alone, stay late after chatting with Dad. I'd been proud of their close relationship. Now, it sent chills down my spine. I decided to find out the truth. If my worst fears were real, my life wasn't just a heartbreak, it was a sick, cruel joke orchestrated by fate. Some truths are so horrifying that even thinking about them makes you shudder. But when you're forced to face them, it's not just a shudder, it's a disgust that seeps into your bones. I couldn't sit still with the suspicion that my wife was involved with my own father. My heart screamed denial, but my mind demanded action. I needed the truth, no matter how brutal. It was a Wednesday. I pretended to have an urgent work meeting and left early. Instead, I parked a block away, waiting. Around noon, Melissa packed a container of food, dressed far too elegantly, tight dress, light makeup, and drove to my father's house 15 minutes away. I followed, keeping my distance. I knew my father's habits. He was a creature of routine, valuing quiet. But lately, whenever Melissa visited, he'd suggest I didn't need to stop by because men don't have much to talk about. Now I understood why. I prepared another mini camera, this time secretly installed in my father's living room by a friend who did electrical maintenance, under the guise of security checks. Sitting in my car, heart pounding, I opened my phone to watch the live feed. At first, it was normal. Melissa set the food on the table, chatting and laughing with my father. He sat on the sofa, his gaze off. Then, my worst fear unfolded. My father placed his hand on her thigh. Not accidentally. Melissa didn't pull away. She took his hand, smiling as if it were routine. I could barely breathe as the world spun. They started kissing, right on the couch where I used to watch baseball with him as a kid. I dropped my phone, hands trembling. This was 100 times worse than the others. Because this time, it wasn't just my wife betraying me, it was the man who raised me. I couldn't fathom how they could do something so vile. Why? When? How long had I been a fool in my own family? I didn't go home that day. I drove to a nearby lake, sitting alone until late at night. My mind was blank, torn between pain, rage, and utter betrayal. But in that despair, I realized something. I held all the power. I had the evidence. I had time. And most importantly, I had the resolve to make them all pay. The next morning, I returned home with a calm face. Melissa greeted me with her usual smile, even mentioning how Dad was so happy when I brought food over. I nodded, smiled. But in my head, a perfect plan was forming. I wouldn't let this end with arguments or tears. I wanted everyone to see their true faces. I wanted them to destroy themselves with their own lies. And I knew the perfect moment: our upcoming wedding anniversary party, where family and friends would gather. I never thought I'd become the kind of person who plans revenge. I was a simple guy, avoiding complications. But when your wife and your own father stab you in the back, simplicity dies. I spent the next week preparing with the precision I used to design electrical systems for skyscrapers. Every step, every detail, flawless. First, I backed up all the videos and images, hard drive, spare phone, and a password-protected cloud. No risks. Then, I met with a lawyer to ensure I was legally prepared. Divorce papers, property deeds, joint bank accounts. I quietly moved my money to a separate account, leaving just enough to avoid suspicion. As for my father, I contacted a real estate agent to handle the house we co-owned. I wanted nothing tying me to him after this. Finally, I planned the anniversary party, which Melissa was eagerly anticipating, expecting something grand like a trip or an expensive gift. I booked a fancy restaurant in downtown Charlotte, a place where our family and close friends often gathered. I invited everyone: my parents, our mutual friends, neighbors, and John. Ascendingly, I wanted them all there when the truth came out. While preparing, Melissa played the perfect wife. She even suggested we try for a baby after the anniversary, as if our marriage was flawless. Every touch from her made me suppress disgust, but I kept smiling, calling her honey, letting her believe I was clueless. Watching her dig her own grave while blissfully unaware was both painful and strangely satisfying. I also cleaned up, before the party, gradually moving my important belongings to a friend's place, the only person who knew the truth and was ready to help. I rented a small apartment on the west side of the city, prepared to move in after everything was done. On the day of the party, as I adjusted my tie in the mirror, I asked myself, "Are you ready?" The answer, more ready than ever. We arrived at the restaurant at 6:45 p.m. Melissa stepped out of the car, radiant, I sparkling like a new bride. She clung to my arm, whispering sweet nothings that once melted my heart. I nodded, smiled, but felt nothing. No love, no anger, no regret. Just anticipation for the moment the masks would fall. The banquet room on the second floor was elegantly decorated. Soft gold lighting, white tablecloths, scented candles. Friends and family were nearly all there. My father arrived late, and Melissa's face lit up when she saw him. Their quick glance was enough to confirm something was wrong between them. John sat near the window, pretending to chat with older neighbors. No one knew the sordid connection between the three. They'd all slept with my wife. We started with appetizers, Melissa toasting and mingling, playing the perfect hostess. She was so convincing that, without the truth, I'd have thought this was a perfect night with a perfect wife. At 8:30 p.m., as the main course was served, I stood, tapping my wine glass with a silver spoon. The room quieted. Melissa placed a hand on her chest, smiling as if expecting a romantic gesture. Friends pulled out phones to capture the moment. I took a deep breath, raised my glass, and began. Thank you all for being here to celebrate our 5th wedding anniversary. 5 years, long enough to truly know someone. Long enough to uncover things you never expected. The room grew quieter. I want to thank 3 people who've helped me grow these past weeks. The air conditioner repairman, our neighbor John, and the man I used to call my father. Melissa froze, her face paling. John wiped his brow, eyes darting. My father raised an eyebrow, gripping his glass too tightly. I set my glass down, pulled out my phone. I have some videos I'd like you to see, memories Melissa hasn't shared. I connected my phone to the large projector screen. The room dimmed, all eyes on the screen. The first video showed Melissa with the repairman in our living room. A punch to the gut for everyone watching. Murmurs erupted. Someone gasped. Oh my God. Melissa covered her mouth, face ashen. I played the second video, her at John's, laughing, pulling him close. The room exploded. Phones came out, recording. Some looked away, shocked. I didn't look at her. I played the final video, Melissa kissing my father, lips locked, hands where they shouldn't be. Shouts filled the room. A friend stood, cursing. Melissa buried her face in her hands, unable to look up. My father sat like a statue, eyes lifeless. I stopped the video, standing tall, voice steady. I don't want apologies or explanations. I just want you to know who I've been living with, who's been sitting beside me all this time. Melissa, I filed for divorce. The bank accounts are split. The house, the car, everything's settled. And Dad, I looked at him. From today, you're no longer part of my life. The room was silent. Melissa sobbed, pleading, but I turned away. My father quietly stood and left without a word. I walked out of the restaurant, leaving behind the cruelty, betrayal, and lies that had eaten away at my life. That night, I didn't sleep. I drove to my new apartment, opened a beer, and stared out the window. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. The next morning, I woke to dozens of missed calls and texts. I didn't need to check to know they were from Melissa. I stepped onto the balcony, breathing deeply in the crisp morning air. The weight on my chest was gone. My phone kept buzzing with her messages. Ryan, please pick up. It's a misunderstanding. I can explain. You can't do this to me. We can fix this. If you don't answer, I'll come to you. Her last message made me laugh. Did she really think I'd cave to her begging? I'd blocked her number the night before. These were just remnants from a chat app one hadn't deleted. But it didn't end there. At noon, a friend, Melissa's former coworker, called. Have you seen Facebook? I checked our mutual friends group. The community was ablaze with clips from the party. Someone had posted the entire takedown. Comments were flooded with shock, anger, and support for me. Melissa tried to explain in the comments, but no one bought it. She was banned from most group chats within hours. That afternoon, my lawyer informed me Melissa tried to renegotiate, but it was futile. I tied up every loose end. By evening, true to her threat, she showed up at my new apartment, wearing a thin coat, face pale, eyes swollen from crying. "Ryan, you can't leave me like this," she choked, stepping closer as I opened the door. I looked at her, emotionless. "I left you the moment you chose to betray me with 3 different men, including my father." She broke down, collapsing to her knees, clutching my pant leg. "I have nothing left, you're everything to me." I pulled her hands away, voice cold. "No, Melissa. I was just a wallet and a roof to you. Now you have neither." I stepped inside and slammed the door, leaving her crumpled in the hallway. The next day, I heard John's children had cut contact with him, even threatening to put him in a nursing home for his unfit behavior. My father vanished from the neighborhood, reportedly staying with an old friend to escape the shame. Melissa lost her job 3 days later when the clips reached her boss. No one wanted a nurse tangled in such a moral scandal. Friends abandoned her, her family disowned her, and she was left with nowhere to turn. I heard she was staying with a distant relative, possibly planning to leave town to escape the gossip. I didn't care. To me, she was a fading shadow from the past. A month after that fateful party, my life was unrecognizable. No more old house filled with fake memories. No more evenings waiting for a wife I thought was working late. No more lying questions or cold embraces. Now, I lived in a compact apartment on Charlotte's west side. Not spacious, not luxurious, but mine. Each morning, I woke early, brewed coffee, and opened the windows to let in the sunlight. Freedom seeped into every breath. I started exercising again, something I'd neglected while trapped in a sham marriage. I reconnected with friends I'd sidelined while building a home. They didn't pry, just stood by me, pulling me from dark thoughts. One Friday evening at my usual coffee shop, I ran into Emily, a bookstore manager near my office. We'd met briefly before when I bought books, but never talked much. This time, she sat at my table, noticing I was alone. "You look like you just walked through a storm," she said, her eyes perceptive. I laughed, nodding. "You're right, but the sky's clearing up." We talked for 2 hours, about books, life, the little things I'd forgotten I loved. Emily was nothing like Melissa. She had a calm, mature sincerity I hadn't felt in years. We started meeting regularly, taking it slow, no grand expectations. Just 2 people who'd been hurt, finding comfort in each other. One day, walking by the lake, Emily paused and asked, "Have you really let go of the past?" I thought for a moment, then smiled. "I'm not sure I'll ever forget it. But I know one thing. It doesn't control me anymore." She took my hand, squeezing gently. No words were needed. I knew I'd stepped into a new chapter. I stopped caring about Melissa's fate or my father's life. They'd chosen their paths and paid the price. I chose to move forward, forgiving myself for being so blind. I thought leaving the past behind meant it would stay there. But life isn't that simple. Old wounds, especially unhealed ones, find ways to resurface just when you think you're fine. One Monday morning, as I got ready for work, my phone pinged with a text from an unknown number. I opened it, and unease hit me. "Ryan, I know you don't want to hear from me, but please read this. I've lost everything. I'm so sorry. I'm not asking you back. I just want to meet once to apologize. Melissa." After over 2 months of silence since she begged at my door, she was back. I sighed, tempted to delete it. But part of me wanted to know what she was up to. All day, more texts came, longer, filled with sob stories. Jobless, disowned, living with a cranky aunt. She claimed she just wanted to meet to close things. I knew Melissa didn't give up easily. But this time, I had nothing left to lose or for her to exploit. I replied with one line. "Old coffee shop, 7 p.m. tonight. After this, never contact me again." I arrived 15 minutes early, sitting at our usual corner, watching the rain-slicked street. At 7 p.m., Melissa walked in. She was a shadow of the confident woman I'd known. Pale, hair tied messily, clothes plain. She sat across from me, silent for minutes, searching for words. "Ryan," she began, voice shaky. "I'm not here to beg. I just want to say I was wrong." I stayed quiet, eyes fixed on her, waiting. "I lost everything because of my stupidity. Your dad, John, they all left when I was no longer useful." She looked down, voice breaking. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I regret it every day. I exhaled, no longer angry or disgusted, just indifferent. Melissa, you chose that path. This is the price. She looked up, eyes red. Are you happy? I smiled faintly. Happier than ever. The meeting ended in 10 minutes. No tears, no goodbye hugs. Just two strangers closing a chapter with a cold full stop. I left the coffee shop feeling lighter. From that moment, Melissa was truly gone from my life, physically and mentally. After that final meeting, I felt like I'd cleared a dark corner of my soul that had clung to me. No more texts, calls, or ghosts haunting my sleepless nights. For the first time in years, I felt true peace. Emily stayed by my side, gentle and patient as always. We didn't rush to label our relationship. We both knew quiet companionship was worth more than grand promises. We'd stroll the city, visit small bookstores or cozy coffee shops. Our talk shifted from pain and past to the future, to simple joys. One afternoon, watching the sunset by the lake, Emily turned to me. If you could go back to the day you found out, would you do anything differently? I gazed at the still water, then answered, no. Everything that happened taught me the biggest lesson. Never put your entire life in someone else's hands. And never think your kindness can change someone's nature. She smiled, nodding. So you've really let go. I took her hand, squeezing gently. I didn't just let go. I'm grateful for what happened. Without that shock, I'd still be living a lie. The days that followed were about work, growth, and savoring the small things I'd missed. I took an investment course, started planning a small business I'd long dreamed of but never pursued while trapped in a golden cage of marriage. I learned to love myself more, cherishing quiet mornings with coffee, evenings reading to soft music, or moments talking with Emily. Melissa? I heard nothing more about her. She was gone from my world, at least in my mind. My father? I didn't care to know how he was living. Family, to me now, wasn't about blood ties but about those who truly respected and loved me. A year after escaping that hellish marriage, I stood in a different place, geographically and emotionally. I left Charlotte, moving to Asheville, a small mountain town in western North Carolina. Winding roads through forests, misty mornings, and quiet orange sunsets over wooden roofs. It wasn't loud or hectic. It gave me what I'd never truly had, stillness. I opened a small coffee and book shop, what Emily and I jokingly called a soul charging station. She was the first in each morning, brewing 2 lattes and arranging old books. We weren't married. Neither of us was in a rush. After everything, I learned love didn't need ceremonies, just sincerity, patience, and trust to stay. Every weekend, I'd sit at a wooden table by the window, open a notebook, and write, not to vent or relive pain, but to remember. I was betrayed, but I didn't let it define me. I fell, but I rose in a way that silenced everyone. I was stabbed in the back by those I trusted most, but I didn't retaliate with knives. I answered with success and peace. One day, as I adjusted a bookshelf, Emily approached, eyes bright. Know what today is? I grinned. A drama-free day? She rolled her eyes, handing me a card. Inside was an invitation to a small-town workshop on rebuilding life after marital trauma, organized by a therapy group that knew my story through Emily, who'd quietly shared it as an example of resilience. I held the card, silent for a moment, then said, maybe it's time to tell it all. Not to dwell on pain, but to show someone desperate that they can overcome too. And so, I sat down, opened my laptop, typed the first lines of the story you've just read. I don't know who you are or what you're going through, but if you feel lost, betrayed, or trapped in a false life, I want you to know, the truth, no matter how painful, will set you free. And in the end, you'll be okay.